Right now, nationally, there are 51% more home sellers than buyers.
Which is just, I mean, an absolutely wild statistic to think about.
It really is. By all basic laws of economics, a buyer in this market should be treated, like royalty.
Right. They should have all the power.
Exactly. You should be able to just walk into any open house, demand some massive discount, and have the seller essentially thank you for your time.
But instead, buyers are getting dragged into these brutal 24-hour bidding wars.
Yeah, and paying well over the asking price.
Exactly.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at some recent, highly contradictory real estate data.
Very contradictory.
Yeah, specifically a historic data set from Redfin to try and figure out what on earth is actually happening out there.
Because that 51% gap between sellers and buyers, it's the largest Redfin has ever recorded.
Right. It's a massive surplus of people just hammering for sale signs into their front lawns.
And at the exact same time, the absolute number of people looking to purchase is the lowest they have ever tracked.
So the mission for today's deep dive is to decode this massive disconnect. We want to answer that boning question you probably have in the back of your mind. Is now actually a good time to buy?
Right.
And we want to extract a concrete strategy for you to actually navigate this chaos.
What's fascinating here is that on paper, those metrics define the ultimate buyer's market.
Right, just unprecedented leverage.
Exactly. But the actual lived experience of trying to secure a home right now completely defies that math.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because we need to look at what's actually happening on the ground.
Yeah, because the spreadsheet reality and the emotional reality are two very different things.
Right. We're dealing with a deeply polarized reality here. On one hand, you have these historic numbers suggesting basically a ghost town of buyers. But then on the other hand, a select few homes are getting multiple offers the instant they hit the market.
Yeah, literally within hours.
While, the house 3 doors down just sits untouched for 4 months until the seller finally gives up and withdraws the listing.
It's a completely fractured landscape. I mean, you essentially have two totally different real estate markets existing on the exact same street.
Honestly, it sounds like a lopsided dating app.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. You have this massive pool of profiles, which is the record gap of sellers, but 99% of the attention, the multiple offers, the bidding wars, all of that instantly funnels to the top 1% of listings.
Flawless wins.
Exactly, the perfect ones, while the rest of the houses just gather dust until they effectively delete their accounts.
Right.
But I have to push back on the core premise here for a second.
Okay, go for it.
If there are so few buyers out there, why are they still getting into these ruthless bidding wars over that top 1%?
Wow.
Like, if I'm a buyer and I see 10 cars parked outside an open house, why don't I just go to the house down the street that's been sitting for 60 days? Why fight the war?
Because the surplus of sellers we're seeing in the data does not equate to a surplus of perfect homes.
Yeah.
You have to factor in the current macroeconomic realities, specifically, the affordability hurdles and where mortgage rates are sitting right now.
Right, which are still tough.
Exactly. So the buyers who are actually active in this market are stretched to their absolute financial limits.
So they basically can't afford to make a mistake.
Precisely. If you are locking in a mortgage at current rates, you aren't going to settle for a weird kitchen layout or, a roof that needs replacing in 3 years.
Or a house on a super busy street.
Right. The scarce buyers out there are highly discerning. They know their exact parameters.
So when a pristine, perfectly priced house hits the market.
Every single active buyer in that zip code spots it at the exact same moment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the macro level leverage just vanishes instantly because for that one specific house, the micro market is intensely competitive.
Which perfectly explains why those specific homes go above asking price in 24 hours.
Exactly. It's quantity over quality out there. The data sees a bunch of houses, but the buyer only sees one that is actually habitable without a massive renovation budget.
And I guess that explains the home sitting for months, too.
Yeah, those belong to sellers who just haven't adjusted to this new reality yet.
They're still pricing like it's a few years ago.
Right. They're pricing their homes based on the market dynamics of 2 or 3 years ago when buyers would just, waive inspections and pay a huge premium for a fixer-upper.
But today's buyers simply ignore those listings.
Exactly. And this deeply polarized environment fundamentally breaks the traditional playbook for how you shop for a home.
So let's talk about that traditional playbook. Because for decades, shopping for a house has essentially been like a casual hobby.
Right. A weekend activity.
Yeah. I call it the morning coffee approach. You wake up, you pour a cup of coffee, you open up an app on your phone, and you just sort of lazily scroll through the newest listings.
Mm.
You wait for a photo of a nice kitchen island or a backyard to inspire you before you even think about, talking to a lender.
And historically, that was a perfectly fine way to operate. I mean, it's how the vast majority of consumers engage with the market.
But looking at this data, that casual approach seems like a guaranteed way to lose right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the research indicates that this weird, bloated inventory, that 51% surplus of sellers, it creates anomalies.
Right.
We're talking about mispriced properties or highly motivated sellers who suddenly just need to offload a house. But those anomalies don't wait around for you to finish your coffee.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the defining mechanism of this current market.
Okay.
You aren't just competing against other buyers anymore. You are competing against a fleeting window of seller psychology.
Okay, walk me through that. What do you mean by a fleeting window of psychology?
Well, think about where this surplus of sellers is coming from. Life doesn't stop just because the real estate market is strange, right?
Right, people still have to move.
Exactly. People are still experiencing major life events that force them to sell: divorces, job relocations, growing families, financial shifts.
Okay, so that creates motivation.
Yes, it creates isolated pockets of desperation. A seller might panic on a Thursday evening and drop their asking price significantly to guarantee a weekend sale.
Wow, okay.
But if they don't get a bite by Monday, they might reconsider, pull the listing entirely, and just decide to rent it out instead.
So if someone is just passively scrolling on a Friday morning, waiting to feel inspired before they bother to dig up their tax returns and call a bank.
Or the window closes before they even realize it was open.
Right, so they're basically just volunteering to miss the boat.
Completely. Capitalizing on desperation or mispricing requires immediate aggressive speed.
Because there's always someone else who's already done the work.
Exactly. By the time a passive buyer feels that spark of inspiration, reaches out to a mortgage broker, waits for the pre-approval letter, finds an agent, and schedules a tour.
That mispriced property is long gone.
It's already been locked down. Another buyer, who was ready to pull the trigger on minute one, took the prize.
Which brings us to the core strategy extracted from all this market analysis.
Yes.
Since passive scrolling is essentially volunteering to lose, the new directive is incredibly blunt, which is just be ready.
Just be ready.
But honestly, I look at the explicit definition of what ready means in this context, and it sounds exhausting.
It does require a massive shift in how you prioritize the steps of buying a home.
Right. It says being ready means having your financing completely locked in, understanding your budget down to the dollar, and knowing exactly what you want.
Before you even start seriously looking.
Right. So let me represent the skeptical listener for a second here.
Okay.
Isn't that just adding an unbelievable amount of unnecessary stress?
Oh, so...
Well, you're telling people to voluntarily undergo the absolute misery of financial underwriting, submitting bank statements, arguing with loan officers, all before they even know if there is a single house on the market they actually want to buy.
I know it sounds awful.
It sounds like a recipe for total burnout.
It does sound grueling up front, but doing that heavy lifting early is actually an emotional shield.
Wait, an emotional shield. So getting pre-approved isn't just an administrative hurdle?
No, not at all. It actually protects you during the search.
Okay, how does that work?
Think about the emotional state of a typical homebuyer walking into an open house today. It's terrifying. Every decision feels monumental, right?
Absolutely. It's the biggest purchase of your life.
Right. And if you are wandering through this fractured landscape without a concrete financial foundation, you are constantly second-guessing yourself.
Like, can I actually afford this?
Exactly. You see a house you like, and immediately the anxiety spikes. Can I afford this? What will the monthly payment actually be? Will the bank even approve me for this neighborhood?
Right.
The emotional variable, which is the house itself, completely scrambles your ability to make a rational financial decision.
I see where this is going. If I know my budget down to the penny before I ever step foot in a house, I don't panic when I see the price tag.
Exactly. You don't have to guess.
Because the math is already done.
You've separated the math from the emotion. You make all the hard, cold, analytical decisions in the safety of your own living room when there is zero pressure.
That makes a lot of sense.
You establish your absolute boundaries. So when that anomaly appears, that mispriced property or that motivated seller, you instantly recognize it because you defined your parameters in advance.
You don't have to wonder if you can afford it. You know you can.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. It makes me think of a sprinter in the starting blocks at a track meet.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right, you're crouched down, your feet are locked into the pedals, your muscles are totally tense, you aren't running yet, and you don't know exactly when the race will start, but all the mechanics are completely locked in.
Yes.
If you wait for the starter pistol to go off before you bend down to tie your shoes, well, the house is already sold.
That is the exact mechanism of readiness we're talking about. You are eliminating the hesitation that causes passive buyers to miss the window.
Because hesitation is the enemy here.
Exactly. When the pistol fires, you don't have to think. You just explode forward.
You can submit a clean, aggressive offer with absolute confidence.
While the passive buyer is still, trying to get their loan officer on the phone,
Right.
the data ultimately concludes that in today's market, being ready isn't just the first step of a strategy. Being ready is the entire strategy.
Okay, so we've established that buyers basically have to act like Olympic sprinters just to secure a home in this tiny, hyper-competitive micro market.
Right?
But if buyers are forced to go through this militaristic preparation, it begs a massive question about the other side of the equation.
Which is?
Why aren't these desperate sellers just dropping their prices? Like, if there are 51% more sellers and their houses are sitting on the market for months, why don't they just adjust to this tiny buyer pool and take what they can get?
Because we have to factor in the lock-in effect,
Okay.
which is this massive invisible force dictating seller behavior right now.
You're talking about the interest rates from a few years ago, right?
Yes, exactly. Millions of homeowners are sitting on mortgages with interest rates around 3%.
Which is basically free money compared to today.
It really is. And for the last couple of years, this created what we call the musical chairs problem.
So what does this all mean? Let's talk about that game of musical chairs.
Yeah.
Because for a long time, the music stopped and absolutely nobody wanted to stand up.
Exactly. Because if you stood up, meaning you sold your house, you gave up that 3% interest rate.
Right.
But more importantly, because inventory was so incredibly tight, there were no other chairs to sit in.
You had nowhere to go.
Right. If you sold your home, you ran the very real risk of not finding a new place to buy or being forced to settle for a house you hated while paying double the interest rate.
That fear kept people completely paralyzed.
They stayed in homes they had outgrown or homes they wanted to downsize from simply because the alternative was too risky.
Which restricted the inventory even further and created a total bottleneck.
It-
But now, according to the Redfin numbers, that bottleneck is finally breaking. The 51% gap means inventory is rising.
Yes.
So it seems like a massive game of musical chairs where nobody wants to stand up first. How does this inventory shift actually give sellers the safety net they need to finally stand up?
This raises an important question, right? Because the real estate market is cyclical, and it fundamentally changes the board.
How so?
The sudden increase in available inventory, the surplus of other sellers, puts extra chairs in the room.
Oh, I see. So it gives them a safety net.
It gives them permission to look around. For the paralyzed seller, the message in this data is incredibly liberating.
Because they don't have to lead blindly anymore.
Right. You can quietly, methodically survey the market without having to give up your seat first. You don't have to hammer a for sale sign into your yard or hire an agent just to see what is possible.
You can basically build the bridge before you burn the boats.
Yes, exactly. The new inventory acts as a buffer. You can start exploring neighborhoods, tracking price drops, and figuring out what your next move actually looks like.
Without the ticking clock.
It removes that immediate ticking clock pressure that comes with having your own home actively listed. You can formulate a strategic plan from a place of safety.
But the irony here is that the advice for the seller ends up being identical to the advice for the buyer.
Yeah, the overarching theme of the market right now spares nobody.
It really doesn't. Whether you are the buyer trying to win a 24-hour bidding war or the seller trying to figure out how to navigate giving up a 3% mortgage,
Yeah.
you have to do the homework before you're forced to take the test.
Exactly.
Let's summarize all of this for you, the listener, because we have covered some really crucial ground today. If you are trying to make sense of this real estate market, here's the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
We are looking at a historically weird environment. The largest gap ever recorded between sellers and buyers. On paper, it looks like a buyer's paradise, right? But out on the pavement, it is a polarized landscape of instant, cutthroat bidding wars and stagnant, lingering listings.
It's just wild out there.
And because of that fracture, the old way of doing things, that casual, passive scrolling while you sip your morning coffee, simply won't cut it anymore.
A casual approach has to be completely abandoned.
Yeah, it will guarantee that you miss the anomalies, the price drops, and the highly motivated sellers that make this market actually worthwhile. The
Absolutely.
ultimate leverage you have right now is not the macro-level market data. The fact that buyers are statistically scarce doesn't help you when you find a house you actually want.
Right, because there's still intense competition for the good ones.
Exactly. Your only real leverage is your own preparation.
Hmm.
It is having the financing done. It is knowing the budget down to the penny.
Right.
It is knowing your exact criteria.
Yes.
Whether you are looking to buy or looking to finally sell that house you've been paralyzed in, your strategy is identical. You must be ready before you ever enter the arena.
Looking at all of this and synthesizing just how demanding this market has become, it leaves me with a thought that stretches beyond the immediate tactical advice.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we have established that being ready requires intense, upfront financial and mental preparation. You have to be that sprinter in the starting blocks, separating the math from the emotion.
Right.
But if the market demands this level of calculated, almost militaristic readiness just to succeed, it makes you wonder if the days of simply falling in love with a house on a Sunday drive are entirely over.
Wow, yeah.
Like, as the barriers to entry get higher, will buying a home permanently shift away from being an emotional, serendipitous milestone and just become a strictly tactical operation?
Going from serendipity to a tactical operation, that is a heavy thought. But given the data we've unpacked today, it feels incredibly accurate to what is actually happening out there.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, listener, that is something for you to chew on. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the current real estate chaos.
Thanks for listening.
Before you make your next big move, take a hard look at your own readiness, put down the coffee, talk to the bank, and lock in your plan. Because out there in the market, the spreadsheet might say you have all the leverage. But out on the pavement, the only thing that actually hands you the keys is being in those starting blocks before the pistol ever fires.